Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the second part of animation. I will discuss movement in the 3D view editor, moving or translating. Translating your objects in the 3D view editor may be performed by selecting the object, pressing the G key as shown here. To select your cube is highlighted in orange color. Hit G, then drag it along the x-axis, for example like this, or G key, then drag it along the y-axis as shown here. The two methods move the object in the scene in different ways. What you see in the 3D view editor when you move objects depends on the method of translation. A cube is translated by pressing the G key, grab, and move it up to the left cube. To the left. The cube also is translated using the Move tool, which activates the manipulation widget if you want. Click on this arrow in order to show these tools. Also click on this cube. This is gonna be showing this moving tool. You can move it up, move it along the x-axis, and move it along the y-axis as shown here. This will be so easy to move it. Now I will discuss planning the animation. Planning the animation is an important part of the process. Without having even a rudimentary idea of what you want to achieve can lead to disaster when the scene becomes a little complicated. In demonstrating concept of animation with a view to illustration, begin with a very simple sequence. The default cube object in the default 3D viewport editor will be relocated. Relocated means translated, then animated to move forward along the x-axis of the 3D world and at the same time scaled along the y-axis as shown here. You can move it on different axes and the movement is confined to x-axis and y-axis in the case where you want to move it along the y-axis or along the z-axis as shown here. The case where you want to animate it, just drag it a little bit to this part. This is gonna be creating and recording new keyframe, just moving this to, for example, the frame 14, frame 120. Also, if you want to move it to animate it along the y-axis and move it to animate it along the x-axis. So let's move on to show you what is the main idea to do that quickly and simply. The keyframes. What is the keyframe? We have keyframes time and interpolation. Interpolation, sometimes it's a mathematical term. If you want to understand, you can search it on Google. It's a mathematical term. I don't get in deep detailing because something hard to understand. The first step in animation is to decide what you want your actor to do in a given time. In this demonstration, the actor will be the cube object as shown here, and we have the default cube. Just as an example, you can animate something much more complicated. How long it takes the actor to do something will depend on how many frames per second animation is run, and this is determined by which format your final render will be. Let me show you something very interesting for you to understand what I'm talking about. Go over this button, which is the output properties. Go over here to the bottom. We have the outputs. The render format determines how many frames per second the animation should run, for example, when playing in a television format NTSC for the US at 30 FPS frames per second. It's gonna be giving you some great features for your animation as shown here. Click to expand. It's gonna be the file where you want to put your output file after rendering animation. Cache results, also PNG, the file format. We have different file format for image, BMP, PNG, JPEG, also different formats. Also for movie, if you want to render it as a video, FFmpeg, AV RAW, AV JPEG. Also the color, if you want to change the color correction, the color depth, 816 compression, and overlay rate. And I will discuss this later, because if you want to render animation, you can check this overlay rate, because this feature make you rendering in every time, and it's gonna be stopping when you switch off your device. So think of 10-second animation that when running at 25 frames per second would consist of 250 frames. If you want to actually go from point A to point B and then to point C in the scene within the 250 frame animation, you first insert a keyframe at frame 1 with the actor at position A. This is giving blended data that says at the frame 1, locate the actor at location A, then at another frame midway in the animation insert a second keyframe with the actor at location B. Finally insert a third keyframe at frame 250 with the actor at location C. These are keyframes for animation. As shown here, we have the first location A, second location B, and the third location C as shown here. And you can see the movement of our default cube in 3D scene. As shown here, we have created keyframes, keyframe 2, keyframe 3. And it's gonna be making it going to change from this position to the second position and to the third position as shown here. And in every 24, I have set the frames to 24 frames per second. In the first location over there, we have the first frames, keyframe, second keyframe, third keyframe. In each 1 second, we have 24 frames per second. And you can see the motion over there. The term interpolation is determining in between different data as shown here. It's gonna be represented by a graph editor. You can go over here, then click on graph editor. It's gonna be showing this graph. Later I will discuss it very well to understand what we mean by interpolation as shown here. So let's launch our animation. As shown here, you have this graph and second graph and the third graph. That means our cube is going to move along the x-axis and y-axis and the z-axis. Z-axis is a straight line because no motion. It's constant to the z-axis, and for the x-axis and the y-axis, here is animation, here is a motion, as shown here. I will discuss it with much more details in the next video. Thanks for watching.